let's remove the negative battery cable and our 8mm battery bolt. Take and remove these two 8mm bolts and get rid of this vortex cover. Now we can blow all the debris out. That cuts down our chance of anything falling down into the cylinder heads. Loosen these two clamps and pop loose this retainer here. Now we can just get a firm grip, walk this off. Now let's grab us a screwdriver and break the seal and get rid of that. Now I grabbed the cruise cable first, just makes it easier for me to hold the throttle open. It doesn't really matter. You'll see right there where it moves in and out. So it'll be a little hard to turn, but once you get past that lock, it'll screw right out. Now we can move on to our brackets. You got three 8mm. And two 10mm bolts. Now we can take and lift these brackets and move our cables out of the way. Now to our throttle body harness. Vacuum hose. Now let's remove our throttle body. 3 number 10. Now I'm going to take an E5 and remove that lower stud. Now we should be able to walk it off. I removed this stud because this hose is too short and it was going to take a lot to pull it off, so I went ahead and removed this stud. I'd rather take a chance on this being bad because most of the time, well, I've never found this to be bad except when there was already an issue to begin with. So if you pull this off and you see it bad, then you've already experiencing some issues with it anyway. But by doing this, I don't have to worry about leaving coolant in the floor, and neither one of these hoses is going to start leaking, and I don't have to top off my coolant or have an air pocket in it. Now to our eval tube. Just push this clip in and that'll slide right off. Be aware this clip would like to fall out. It fell out on mine, so if yours slides out easy, set it to the side so you don't lose it. Now to our purge solenoid harness. Now our mount sensor. And our knock sensor. And detach harness from intake. And we have 2 harness clamps. Now number 10 nut. Now we're going to move to our injector connectors on the passenger side. What you're going to want to do is this little gray tab. Now it will pull all the way out. If it does, we'll reinsert it, but you just lift it up till you got this space here. Then you're going to take and push that in, and this will lift off. We've got 4 on this side. We're going to get 4 on the other side. Now let's move over to the other side and we'll get our alternator harness. Now on the driver's side, I did find it was necessary to pull the locks all the way out. Because of the way they're located, you cannot really reach this little tab here. Now on this last injector, we've got to remove our PCV valve anyway, so you just work it back and forth and raise it up and get it out of the way. We'll take and bleed off any existing fuel pressure. Grab your rag and just push in on the Schrader valve, because next up we're going to remove our fuel pressure lines. We've got a safety clip. We're going to have to pop it up and it'll slide right out. The return line has the same issue. We'll have to move a safety clip on it. You will need a special tool. Pull the hose at the same time you're pushing your tool in. Make sure it's fully seated, and then you can walk it off. Same thing goes with the bottom. Now our number 10 EGR tube. This tube is ribbed and made to bend. Now it takes some finessing to get this out. O-ring we don't want to damage it, or we'll have a vacuum leak. Now 10 intake bolts, 7mm, 5 on each side. Now as far as removing the intake bolts, the repair manual doesn't call for any kind of torque sequence, removal sequence, so I usually just go to whichever one's the easiest. So I let my engine cool down, and then I'll just start taking the bolts out. The type of plastic or composite this is made of, I have never had any issues with it warping. Now when you're pulling this intake out of here, you're going to want to bend this around enough to get the intake above it. Now when we're removing the intake, we're going to walk it out slow and work our evap tube out as we go. It's running in between the fuel rail. Now we can take our brake booster hose, work it out, and put it in between our fuel rail. Now we're going to take, with the intake off, we'll take our shop vac and clean up any loose debris before we start doing any actual cleaning, and make sure you get down your cylinder head ports. Now you don't want to use your house vacuum because you're going to pick up contaminants. Now we'll put some rags in our intake cylinders on our heads. Now I use this cloth-like rags, which I find to be worthless, but they're tough. They'll absorb brake cleaner and all that stuff, and they won't tear. It won't stick to the inside of your heads. None of the debris, once we start cleaning, will fall off down in there. Now you want to use something other than a paper towel or a paper product, because if you'll notice, if you put a cloth down in there, it's not going to tear. And as this stuff dissolves and breaks down in there, it'll soften up the paper, and you'll have more paper stuck to the inside of your cylinder heads, and then you'll have to try to clean that out, and if you miss some, it's going to get down in there and it could damage your engine. And now I like to pre-treat it a little bit, let this soak down, let it sit for just a little bit. You see it's already starting to break it up. And any degreaser, them rags is going to catch. And then we'll take a wire brush and clean it up. That stuff will come right off. Now I'm just going to loosen it up with this. Then we'll take a rag and clean up. Now I'm using a brass brush because it is aluminum. Now we'll put a little brake clean on our towel. Not a whole lot of work. And now our knock sensors. If you look, it's oval shaped. You'll want to get on the oval part. Take and squeeze her together just like that. Now we're going to use a 22. There we go. Same goes for the rear. Let's look at the end of it. I believe that's our culprit. Get a good view down in there. That thing stands full of water. And that's the reason why we're getting the knock sensor coat. Now let's get us some cleaner. We'll go around this hole and get us a better look. Now if you'll see right there where that discoloration is, that's where our water had been leaking down into it and corroded it up. Now that plate is made of aluminum, so we'll just take some 800 grit sandpaper and go around inside the hole and get it smoothed out. Here I'm taking a screwdriver and I'm going to break up the big stuff. You look, it's still got moisture and rust down in it, so I'm going to finish cleaning, drying that out. Now we can install our new knock sensors and torque to 15 foot-pounds. Install our harness. Little tug, make sure it's locked. Now I pulled these off the old ones. The little clips And I'm going to tape them to the new harness. That'll help keep it secure, and that's where it was to begin with the old one. Now on to our intake. Got a little clip on the sides here that helps hold it on. One there, one in the middle. We're done. Now I'm going to flip it over. That'll help prevent anything that breaks off of this from going down inside there. And clean the maintenance surfaces. Now I'm going to take my wire brush, scuff it up, which just won't leave any marks on your intake. We'll do that on both sides. Now we can blow it out. You may have an urge to clean all the carbon inside out because if you look at the way the design is, if you start dissolving and don't get it all cleaned out, a big chunk could fall down and go into one of your cylinders. Sometimes less is more. Now these two gaskets are the same, so it doesn't matter which side you put it on, so don't worry about that. This gasket has a little line-up hole here and extruding on that, so now our injector lock is going to go above, in between here. Now we're ready to install our intake. We're going to walk it down in stages, not to slide, making sure all our harness connectors. I'm going to pull my brake booster hose down because we're going to have to walk this evap hose back through there. Well, it's actually an evap tube, and it's got to go down between our injector rail pipes. Now, if you do bend this, it seems to be pretty resilient. And we'll just keep easing it down, not to slide. We don't slide it and cut our gaskets. Now we want to start all our intake bolts by hand. Now this is my last one to torque on the first round, but look at the difference in the grummage. Now you don't want to take your torque wrench and sit there and crank and crank and crank, when all you got to do is take you a small ratchet and just turn it until you feel it stop. You'll feel it stop, and it won't be, see right there, it's not over torqued, I guarantee you. Now we can take it down to our 44. Now that'll save you some time. And now let's install our EGR tube. Now we can install our number 10 bolt. Now as I walk this in and tighten the bolt at the same time to try to keep this as centered as possible. Now once it stops, I'm just going to bump it a little bit more so that it don't screw out. So let's go ahead and reinstall this throttle body. Now our stud, we're going to just tighten it till it stops. 5 inverted. Now once it stops, I'm just going to bump it a little bit more so that it don't screw out. Our 3 nuts. Now I'm just going to run these in until I start to feel them snug up. I'll go one at a time, work my way around, because we want to bring our throttle body all in one piece at one time. Now that one I'm going to run till I feel it stop. Do the same thing to the other 2. You see it pulling it in, and torque them to 53 inch-pounds. Our brake booster hose, our clamp, fuel lines, safety locks. Now in this evap tube, when you remove it, you got to be cautious because some of these will slide out. Now we're going to go ahead and reinstall that. Now we'll pull our harness up here, start getting it lined up. Now our nut, number 10, our main harness clamp. Now throttle position, this for the click, pull back on it, idle air control, alternator, and our evap. Attach our knock sensor cable, hook up our knock sensor and mount sensor. Our injector connectors, ×8. Now these locks won't push all the way down until you got it fully engaged. Now on these connectors, when you reinstall this, if this is still stuck out, you're going to have to tuck it in because it will never engage until you do. So just take and push it in under. You see this come up, you don't see it no more. Now it'll slide on there and lock. Now our PCV. Now we can grab our throttle body cables. Now our cable bracket. We got 2 number 10s, starting by hand, and 3 number 8s. 2 number 10s, and 3 8mm bolts. Torque to your discretion. Crankcase spin hose. Now our cruise cable, leaving enough slack that it doesn't interfere with our throttle closing. Now our throttle cable. $8mm snug. And reinstall our push pin. And our 8mm battery bolt. Our bracket cover, 2/8. Well, that's it. Thank you for watching. We're out of here.